Hello, I am Julia Abram, a semi-self-made half veterinarian / podcaster in my own country, in Estonia. This interview was recorded initially for my podcast 100 Estonian Vets. But then it was so useful and full of so much interesting information that I kind of felt that it has to be international. So here we are, sitting with Mette Uldahl, first Vice President of FVE, Federation of Veterinarians of Europe. And we had a really nice chat about how each and every one of us can change the veterinary legislation and our well-being in general. I hope you listen, and I hope you will actually watch what Mette has to say. So Mette, thank you for agreeing for this small but very important conversation. And please tell me about yourself just a bit, like who you are and how did you become to be a very important person in FVE?
Yeah, my name is Mette Uldahl, and I'm a veterinarian, graduated in 2001. And I've been working in practice, first in mixed practice for a short while, and then progressing quite fast into horses and sport horses and elite horses, but soon realizing that I have a very big heart for animal welfare. So if I wanted to make a difference, working one-to-one was, you could do some differences, but if you worked with more people into organizations or at political level, you could do even more. So I just slowly ventured into politics and research and publications. So today I work with politics. I work as a consultant for different types of organizations across, the field of veterinary areas. And then I work with research as well. So that's basically who I am today. But, venturing through a veterinary career coming here. And part of it has been to engage with the veterinarians of Europe, our shared commitment to the animals and to ensure that our voices are heard. And I worked via the established Federation for Veterinarians of Europe, where I'm currently part of the board as the first vice president.
I just love the passion I already see in your eyes, because this is the type of people we really need to be responsible of politics, and the people who actually know what they are doing and have a clear target in veterinary medicine. This is something so important, and I already appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
Would you please tell me and our viewers about FVE? What is this organization and why is this so important to all the vets in Europe?
So I will get a little bit back to it, in some slides, but very briefly, FVE is an organization of 38 European member countries. So it's not only EU member countries, but beyond EU membership also. It's more than 300,000 veterinarians working within different fields, working in practice, working with hygiene, working as official vets. So this is basically the shared voice for veterinarians to speak into Europe and very much EU as a structure.
So it's the whole veterinary industry. It's not small animals, large animals, it's everyone.
It's everyone. FVE is everyone. And I'll show you a chart later where I just show you how practitioners feed into the overall voice and how official vets. So there'll come a chart to make you, to make it easy to understand the structure of how FVE is built. But FVE is kind of the umbrella on top of all voices, practitioners, hygienists, researchers, whoever has a veterinary degree within Europe.
I really loved what you said. FVE is everyone. It's like a title, Do you want to share your presentation, or is there anything else you want to add before?
No, I think we'll start the presentation and then, feel free to ask on the way and just interrupt if there's anything I need to elaborate further. And I think we'll come through a lot of it because what I'll be talking about today is how to work, how to influence in Europe, because it seems like such a broad concept. Now you see here a bit of a blurry photo of all the flags within EU. And then I've added a map, because many of us will immediately go to look at our own national country, coming from Estonia or whatever country you come from. But the thing is that much of law, when you live in an EU member country, much of what is going on actually comes from EU, comes from Brussels. So it's quite important to understand how to work with Brussels. And when I ventured out from Denmark, to work at European level, I had no idea how it was built, and I had no idea how to influence. And I really believed there was a long way going to influence on these matters. And then I simply learned that that's not correct. You can actually go quite far. And that's what I would like to try to share with you today. But to do that, I found from paper related to Brexit, not intentionally, but I just found a good chart of how EU is built. And I just want to start by saying, what is EU? So we have the European Parliament, which is basically the voice of the people. So all the people within EU. And all the people at national level elects 720 members directly every fifth year. The job for
That's a
them,
big rotation.
that's a rotation. And it's also important already now to understand if you want to engage with the European Parliament, you engage with people who has to be re-elected in 5 years. So you better come up with topics, if you want them to engage with you, it has to be topics which makes it more likely for them to be re-elected. This is also understanding who you're talking to. So what they do, they share legislative rights with the council. I'll come back to that. They jointly pass EU laws with the council. When you talk to them, it's about decisions about which laws should come in place. They also work with the EU budget, and they are kind of holding the European Commission accountable for doing their job correctly. So that are all the politicians from at national level going to Brussels and working for us. Then we have the Council of Ministers, and that is ministers from all EU member countries going to Brussels and meeting there, and they co-legislate with the parliament, and they coordinate policies like economics or foreign affairs, and they also approve the EU budget with the parliament. So we have the ministers, and then we have the members of the parliament. Then we have the commission, and I'll talk a lot about the commission because the commission is really interesting for us as veterinarians. That is EU officials plus I have written, because there's a lot of permanent people hired as officials in the commission, but there's also commissioners. So it's kind of the EU government. It's a government, but it's also a lot of permanent people being hired to work as officials. So you have the permanently people working there, and then 27 commissioners, one from each EU member country. They propose new EU laws. And here it's important already to start listening, because if you're in an office or in an organization, where would you like, to figure out that a new rule for how to eat cookies in the office was on its way? You would like to get engaged with that as soon as people mentioned that they have started a group looking on the rules for serving cookies in the office. And that's the EU Commission. They are proposing new EU laws, and then the Parliament and the Council, they are there to debate and approve them. So they also implement EU decision, manages the budget, look at treaties and laws are correctly applied. So they are quite important. So we have these entities here, and the last entity is the head of EU member state and the government. That's all the presidents and the head ministers from each country going to Brussels, having important meetings. And what they do is that they take high-level decision. Remember, they're the head of the state, so they go high level. And they talk about treaty changes, enlargement of EU, foreign policy. They share ideas. They do not pass laws, but they do choose the president of the European Commission. So here we are at the top level with visions and ideas and enlargement and stuff, but not passing laws. Then we have the Court of Justice, and they ensure that the laws we have decided that they are applied in each member state. So you can imagine they have a difficult job, because then, in a country from Brussels, there's a new law and everyone thinks it's a stupid law, as is tradition within the EU, and they have to ensure that these laws are actually implemented. We also have the bank, the European Central Bank, who manages the euro and controls the Eurozone monetary policies. And we have the Court of Auditors. They're kind of a financial watchdog. They check if the money spent in EU are spent well. So I imagine this is also a very interesting facility to work in. They probably have a good story or two to share.
A lot of gossip.
Yeah, a lot of gossip. So we have all of these entities where you have to figure out, how do I work into, and which entities are interesting for me to work in relation to whatever purpose you have. So first thing is to understand, how do you make an EU law? Now, the Commission basically drafts, the ideas of the laws, and then it goes to the Council and the Parliament, and they debate, amend, and debate in between each other until they can reach acceptance. Doing this, sometimes they put it back to the Commission, so you have kind of a triangle here between the three, and that's why this process is called a trilogue. Making an EU law is a trilogue between the Commission drafting the words and then the Council and the European Parliament discussing it. So how do you influence all this? How do you do it? I just took some, personal photos into this, talking about how you can do it. And we'll start with the European Parliament. How do you talk to the European Parliament? You can do that several ways, but one of the ways is to go to the European Parliament, where I went in Strasbourg in February 25 this year, because I was invited by one of the European Parliament members, who happens to be the chair of the intergroup on the welfare and conservation of animals. I work very much into animal welfare, but it could be other topics as well. And what I was invited to come and present was something about horse sport, because that's one of my professional areas. And I was invited as an expert because I have quite a few publications in this area. And I also have publications about how to translate evidence and ethical principles into laws and regulations, which can be used when the politicians afterwards want to make a practical proposal for something when asking experts to come. And my take in this meeting was to talk about how we have intrinsic value of the animals, how we know a lot about the basic needs and the sentience of animals. And then on the other hand, in the orange, we have the societal or individual human interest, the industry and individual owners, talking about how we can figure out which compromises we can make on the animals, on their intrinsic value, what is acceptable if humans have an idea of what they want to do, and then we have the animals we drag into this. So we need to figure out what is the proportion, what is ethical balance for societal decisions. And this is, if you ask me, exactly why vets are needed on the scene, because we know a lot about animals and their needs and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and we are the voice for the animals. So very important that veterinarians are involved in this phase of figuring out, industry, animals, how should we find a balance?
So would an example be, if we use animals as food, then the rules on how do we need to ethically kill is a bad word, but basically kill them so that they would feel as less harm as it is possible.
Yeah, definitely. That is a good example, because when we talk about, and actually killing is a term, to slaughter, so it's a dramatic term, but it's actually what we do. We kill a lot of animals, to eat them. So when we talk about killing, if you go to the orange square where we have the societal or individual human interest, we would have traditions, we would have religion, we would have people wanting steaks on their plate. And then in the green one, we have the intrinsic value of the animals. Is it okay to slaughter them without stunning due to religious beliefs? We need to have a stance on that, and we need, as veterinarians, to argue what is acceptable or not. And FVE has a position paper on killing of animals, where we argue from an evidence-based platform what is okay and what can we accept as compromises, stress with transport to the slaughterhouse, how with their time in the agricultural system, what should be, when is there room enough for each entity, for each cow, for each pig, what about calves, when can you separate them from moms? All that is what FE work with. So when we go to meetings, all what we say is based on position papers made by consultations with all member countries, all 300,000 veterinarians across Europe, asking them, do you have expert input on this? And can you accept, when we've put it down in words, that this is the overall position? Yeah. So you can actually take whatever topic and put it into this frame, and then ensure that we have a level of agreement as veterinarians, and it's evidence-based. Now you can also arrange lunch meetings or other meetings with the members of the European Parliament. If you have a topic and then you approach a member and say, hey, I would like to discuss this with you. And if it's interesting for them, and then of course it has to be interesting because they're approached by many, many people, then they might say, yeah, but you can come to Brussels and we can have a lunch. And as you can see on the table, it's always very nice lunches you get in Brussels. And then you sit half an hour, and you talk to this person about your specific agenda for the meeting. And you have to be efficient. You have to understand that it has to be practical and make sense to them. Otherwise, it's just a wasted lunch for them. So you have to come well prepared when you do that. You can also arrange meetings where a broad crowd of the European Parliament members are invited. And you can do that, at a national level, going to your, to the ministries in your own member country, and then they can help arrange a meeting like that. You can also do it with an NGO you work for. And then, you basically just get a room in the European Parliament, raise an agenda, you invite the members of the European Parliament, and they come for this meeting where you have topics put on the agenda. And then it's a very good way of engaging them with topics in ways you would like to engage them. So that's also, it seems like a very long way going to arrange a meeting in the European Parliament, but actually you can do it with, if you just go to your own ministry at home, and they have access to do it as well. So that is the Parliament. And now we'll go to the Commission. And as I told you from the beginning, I'm always very keen on the Commission, because that's actually where you put down the words the first time, and that's also the most interesting part of
those people don't change so fast and so frequently.
No. If something is suddenly in a draft, it's much more difficult to change it than ensuring what comes in the draft from the beginning. Yeah.
Who puts the information into the Commission to be drafted? Is it?
So that can be, that's a good question. That can be the Council, the European Council, or the ministers, or the Parliament members. All of them can raise a topic, but it can actually also be citizen-led. And I'll come back to that, because every citizen, you and me, we can start collecting signatures for a citizen-raised topic. And if we get enough signatures for that, then it is the duty of EU to actually raise the topic. But I'll come back to that, because that's a very interesting
Because I was thinking
of raising a topic also.
The breathing principles in flat-faced dogs, for example, because Netherlands is the leading this matter, and the things they've achieved on that topic, it's amazing. I'm just like, how can we get that EU wide?
Yeah.
And what we've done to animals.
Yeah, it's a citizen petition. You can make an EU citizen petition, and if you get enough signatures, then you raise the topic. So every person can do this. And I have a slide later where I'll show you all the topics that has been raised by petitions the recent years, because EU citizens suddenly realized, and NGOs realized, hey, this is a very swift way of raising a topic. So you can do that. So the Commission, they're drafting laws. And so EU, I think it's fair to say that they have avoided animal welfare for many years, because it's always very explosive debates.
Emotional.
It is difficult when you also have agriculture as a very important thing, and how to balance those two. But in 2017, based on all these EU citizen petitions, there was no doubt that EU had to raise, they had to do something about animal welfare, because there was, and these are only some of them I've put in here, there was a lot of initiatives where people of Europe said, hey, EU, you need to look into animal welfare, because we want you as politicians and as our governmental system to do that. It also meant that the intergroup, all the members of the European Parliament, their group for animal welfare, they have said that European citizens' initiatives, they are a very important instrument of participatory democracy in the EU. So never forget about the petitions, they're very important. And it led to this platform, which is a huge EU permanent thing, where we even have a hashtag now, EU for animal welfare, which has been avoided for years. So since 2017, this has become a fact that now we actually work on animal welfare within EU. Now, for me, being a little bit of a cynical person, having worked with animal welfare for many years and having put it into papers and stuff, I always like good intentions, but I like them more when I can see that, that it's actually translated to reality, because there's a lot of different interests within EU which can block for the intentions. So what I try to do is to ensure that we actually get into practice with these initiatives. And you can do that by looking at what the Commission does, because they are constantly working on new ideas. And one way to do it is to go and meet officials in the Commission. And we do that within FVE. And this was a meeting, in 2018, where we looked at the regulation of the veterinary medicinal products, which has since come into place and implemented as a law. And here we went and asked, for one particular thing regarding SPCs, the recipe of how you can use medicinal products within EU, because we could see that they had put a must, that we must use according to the SPC.
Mm-hmm.
Veterinarians has no flexibility in how to administer medicinal products any longer when this came into place. So we had several meetings saying, hey, if we can say should instead of must, just one word, then we have the flexibility we need. So we are successful in a lot of those meetings. This meeting was not successful. I did not manage to convince that we should change a must to a should. So today we have the problems unfolding for veterinarians with, having to strictly abide to the SPC as it is stated word by word. So just to say how important meetings can be, some of them are successful, not all of them. You can take photos here. I was allowed a photo, so this is why I used it as an example. But many times it's just about, being aware of a draft and seeing, hey, if this is a must, we'll have big problems in the veterinary profession. If we can change it to a should or something else, then we will solve the problem. So it's a very minor level, sometimes even words, if you can manage to pick up on that soon and change it, a lot of trouble is avoided later on.
And again, Mette, it is very important to us have people like you, the people who really want to go through the legislation and see those really small details like must, should be, should. And I totally understand how it would make veterinarians' life so much easier. And then again, you need to have real passion and time and resources to go into committee and trying to change that. So again, I'm so grateful for people like you for doing that kind of work, because not every veterinarian is good with legislation or even interested in what or how it makes the work that we do so cool or uncool. It's
No, but
boundaries that we
that's
can use.
why, that's why we need to be organized as a veterinary profession, because not all vets should be interested in words or in long text and reading them. And it's not like I do it personally. I also stand on the shoulders of FVE administration in Brussels, where they have people really dedicated to doing this. And then sometimes, for some reason, I have a personal interest in, one draft, and then I read it word by word. But this is about being organized enough to ensure that we cover the full portfolio from the veterinary profession. So some expert at some point will, raise the flag and say, hey, this might be problematic. And then it might be me as a member of the board, taking the meeting arranged by the FVE administration, coming well prepared because I've been prepared by expert and the administration, and then just raising the voice. But it's actually just talking on behalf of all of it, because when this unfolds, as you know, it'll be hugely problematic at practical levels if we do not speak up as soon as possible and do our best to
better option.
to secure a room to roam for veterinarians with our professional insight. And this is actually very, very much related to our ability to use antibiotics today. If FVE did not, it has been an incredible success for FVE to go and talk about veterinarians, why they need antibiotics. Otherwise, there would have been severe restrictions. So sometimes, it's also about knowing how this system works, that we just support people with whatever interests. We should support people in practice, but people in practice should really realize how the structure actually also are there to help them and their needs when they go to work in daily life. Yeah. So now I'm just, we could take the direction of health, we could take the direction of hygiene, but I'll just take the direction of animal welfare. So if you look into animal welfare and the framework, the EU framework, who can take part in that work? Well, all member state authorities, they appoint people who will take part. So you have officials from your own country going. They can also appoint experts, which can be you if you know a lot about whatever within the veterinary profession. You can work via NGOs. They have seats at all levels. There are agricultural animal welfare organization. They are embedded in this work as well. It can be from a research or otherwise expert view that you can work with this. So EU needs experts at all levels, and they need people with an interest at all levels. And the purpose of this is to exchange best practices, to support implementation of EU laws, to develop voluntary commitments going beyond minimum standards if that's needed. And how do you get engaged with this? Well, you just have to sign up, for example, DG Sante, which is about health of animals, or EFSA, which is about animal welfare. You can sign up for newsletters, or you can ask your organizations to sign up, so you don't have to have all these newsletters if you don't want them. And then you'll see there's call for applications regularly, where you can become a member of this or that platform. And if you do that, then you're already in the center of where things happen. And there's lots of these applications. And FVE really try to distribute these. For example, this application was distributed to UEVH and FECAVA, who works with small animals, to ask, do we have anyone who can apply for this so we can have a seat at the table?
Are there any qualifications, special qualifications you need to have to maybe apply for some of those positions?
Now, the beauty is that if you go via FVE and UEVP and FECAVA for this call, then they will appoint. FVE is accredited as an NGO at high level because, we have 38 countries and lots of members. So if we see you, Julia, as having special insight in an area and that could be needed, we can appoint you for a seat. Whoever comes forward, and of course we will look at the qualifications, but many people have the qualification, can be appointed by FVE and the structure we have as veterinarians. So we as veterinarians, we look at each other and say, hey, you know a lot about this. Isn't that a good call for you to sit at this seat? And then you have the Brussels administration right in your backhand to, serve you with a lot of information and educate you on how does this work and what should I do and how to do this. And then you can already sit there and influence. And you can do that also at national level, asking your national authorities, how do we respond to these calls, because I have an interest, or the National Veterinary Association have an interest in veterinary voices, to take part in this.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I'm able to explain how sure, it's just
It's
apply
just if you
this.
like, if you feel that it calls to you, just
Yeah,
apply, and then then this, I don't know, whoever will decide, but at least you have put
yeah,
yourself forward to be in the
yeah,
selection. Because if you do not put yourself in the position that someone would know that you are interested of it, no one will contact you.
no, because
Yeah,
then,
that's
you're
amazing.
there.
And again, the same thing for me, it's with the scholarships that are given out. If no one knows that you want to apply for the scholarship, you will not get the scholarship. You need
Yeah,
to apply to get it.
yeah,
And sometimes it's just doing this small step, and it's the toughest, you know.
yeah,
Uh,
it is. And just getting to know how it's not far from you. It's just within, you can just reach it. But it's a very good thing to do it via FVE or via a heavy organization, because then your voice, it's just easier going that way. Also because you get support to how to apply, and it's not difficult to apply, but it's just very easy if you have support to, if you have whatever question.
Helping hand.
Yep. So you can also ask, you can also make your own groups. You can make a voluntary group. So if you at national level can convince a ministry that you would like to propose EU animal platform for welfare to have a voluntary group, it's just doing it. But you have to do it via a national authority, a ministry. And then you can say, hey, I'll run the group, and then you just make a group, you make a structure for the seats in the group, invite different NGOs and blah, blah, blah. And then you have a group.
Mhm.
And they're not, they're not a permanent EU group. It's a voluntary group, and you have to self-finance. But then you can produce a paper, and you can ship that paper to EU, and they can endorse a paper, and then suddenly it's an official EU paper. That's also a way of doing it. Then they have stakeholder meetings where they invite stakeholders to come. And it's very often very easy to, if you see these stakeholder meetings, just write, hey, I come from this organization, can I please take part? And they say, yes, you're welcome. Here's an invite. One of these stakeholder meetings was last year in June, because the EU Commission has asked EFSA to produce a report on keeping of horses in EU. And they made a kick-off meeting for this process with a stakeholder meeting arranged by EFSA, where they asked, people with working in the industry and animal protection and others. And I was invited to go to this stakeholder meeting to start making this scientific opinion on how to keep horses. And I was asked to present mutilations of horses and use of the horses in the bioindustry. This invitation was made due to me being part of FVE, but also because I've published papers on use of horses in the bioindustry. I've worked on joint position papers with the World Veterinary Association, FVE, the European Horse Veterinary Association, the American Veterinary Association, and the Canadian Veterinary Association. We had already a joint position paper where we said we do not call for ban on any use of animals, but we call for defined and supervised and enforced minimum criteria of the welfare of the horses. So we do not call for a ban, but we do call for end of animal cruelty and a ban of low standards of animal welfare. So this is a very important thing to already ship into the kickoff meeting of how to deal with horses in the bioindustry, because we have some problems, or quite severe problems, at some facilities of how these horses are treated. Now, after this meeting, what happened was that EFSA contacted me at a personal level with, my bio and what I've done, and asked, hey, can we contract you as a hearing expert, drafting text for this report in different areas, and then your text will be shipped to an expert group, and they will, write the end text of the report, which will be given to the European Commission.
Mm.
And of course, that's interesting. So I have had a contract from March, ending in October, where I draft text based on evidence and research and whatever for this group. So that's another opportunity if they get to know what what is your portfolio. And I don't work with a university, so you can do that as a private person as well, if you have some insight. And then suddenly you're drafting text on behalf of the European Commission,
and you are a legitimate expert in the matter, which is so cool, because again, the suggestions for the paper come from a person who really knows what they are doing.
Exactly.
I am so proud of you. Like, wow.
It's also, it's hard work, and working with authorities, there's a lot of systems and a lot of things, but it's interesting and you learn from it. So just to say that, when I started, working, graduated as a vet, if anyone had asked me, how will you go to EU and work with them? I would just been blank, But it's actually possible to get quite close, or just get directly into the engine and work with them. And, at different levels, everyone can do this. So we also have a commissioner. That's a new thing. We have a commissioner for health and animal welfare in the commission. Nobody has really been successful in getting to talk to him. And so far, I think this role still needs to unfold, and I hope it will. But it's been very difficult to get this new thing up and running, because it's been very hard to get in contact with him. But potentially this is also a very important thing, to be very close to a commissioner like this and work with them.
I would ask a question. If a commissioner who is put in charge for animal welfare has no concept of pets, of animals, of any welfare, just doesn't know and is not really interested in the matter, which is unfortunate if that kind of a person gets this position. But sometimes things happen. So how should we even, not just approach, but make the topic of animal welfare very important for him or her as well?
That's actually why I said, in the beginning, working with the parliament, working with politicians, that you have to be, but that goes for everyone. You have to have an idea of, the person you're going to talk to, either beforehand, or be very fast in understanding what is their range of knowledge in the area. And then you have to know that if they don't know anything, you have to go very simple and do not expect too much. So you have to be able to speak at a very simple level,
Yeah.
which I don't mean simple as in intellectually simple, because it's not necessarily that, but you have to start at the beginning if people don't know anything. So it's very important to identify soon when you speak to people. But it's also very important, to have thought about what you want to say enough yourself, so that you can present solutions, because they just need solutions. So you need to be able to raise the argument that this is something we have to consider and it's important, and it'll be more difficult for them sometimes if they do not consider it now. So it's better for them also to consider. And then you have to have practical solutions. And actually, this is where veterinarians, we're not very good at this, because we talk and talk a lot about details, and we are so focused on nerdy stuff and details. So it's very often difficult for us to
Explain it very easily
explain and compress it.
without using any specific terminology which a normal kind of person does not understand. So I do understand what you are telling.
Take, stop a person on the street and do a pressure test and say, can you listen to me, for 1 minute? And I'll just say this to you, and then you just tell me if you understood what I said. That's actually a very good test, or asking family, which is not related to veterinary profession or something. Because so you have to work on your communication skills and work on your ambitions. Not all people are as nerdy and interested in animals as we are. So you have
But yet
to.
again, like you said, you need to understand the person you are talking to, and you need to understand what is the problem, how to put the problem into proper words that it would be understandable, and also offer a solution, and why you have to deal with the solution now, not later,
Yes,
and
exactly.
how everybody wins.
That's it.
Easy.
Do that. Easy. That's it. But that's actually it. And you have, and it's kind of a, stepwise thing. You can control yourself before you go to a meeting and see, can you do this? It's also, you have to figure out how pragmatic you are willing to be, because, solutions are also about understanding balance. Right now, the geosocietal situation we're in Europe, it can be hard coming and talking about cows, calves, pigs, dogs, not having a high enough quality of life, particularly to people, not as into animals as we are. So sometimes you have to understand where there's momentum and where there's no momentum, and be willing to accept that this was what I could get, but at least we didn't go backwards. Something like that can also be a success, just securing some areas.
And I do understand that sometimes it's right topic, wrong time, because if it's the right topic, but they are just in the middle of elections, this is not their priority. The priorities are to keep the same people in the same field, so that you can develop the same topic, the same issue, maybe later after the elections. So you do have to really time the questions and problems well as well, don't you?
And just be very realistic about that, you think this is of utter importance, which you might know it is. Also understanding that, perhaps it's just not of importance to other people, and then speak from there. Now, okay, so that is the commission. And as you can hear, I'm very passionate about the commission, because I think that's a very important structure within EU. But there's also the council. And the council was all the ministers and officials from national member countries. And here you can also be invited to come. For example, this is the chief veterinary officers. That is, the head of the official vets from each country. They meet regularly. And this is a chief veterinary officer meeting on its way, where FVE was invited, and I went there on behalf of FVE to speak about the importance of further implementing on-farm veterinary visits in line with the EU animal health law. So I was speaking about a law which is actually already accepted and passed and should be implemented, but which is not implemented. And my aim was to raise the interest of the CVOs to let them know how this can protect from emerging diseases and disease spread within Europe, which is a big problem, and why they should advocate at national level for further implementation of this law. So this, you can also go to the council, and there can be good reasons going there, and we do that regularly as well. Now I just brought this in because you can find this online, and this is an EFSA scheme of how you can engage if you want to engage with the EU. They actually have an explanation, a folder, which is quite easy to look at, where you can see, hey, I work with epidemiology. Okay, I'm actually relevant. I work with whatever. And then you can look at how to enroll within EFSA and who can apply. And everyone can apply. Of course, you need some insight to do it. You need to kind of prove your insight. And you get paid, not a lot, depending on, it's coming from a Nordic country where we have high taxes, this is a low payment, but you get paid if you get a contract. So there's explanations also you can follow up on just going online and look at what is offered now, which calls out, and how can I engage with it. Mm-hmm. So this is the European system. But around the European system, there's also lots of ways to engage with NGOs, councils, both at national and European level, commissions, meeting and congresses. And I just put a couple of photos in here because this is me at a panel debate with young farmers of Europe talking about, farming principles and how to move forward with development on behalf of FVE. This is from a congress in Copenhagen University where there was veterinary, the Equine Internal Medicine Congress. This is from a debate about rewilding of animals in nature parks. And this is from an FVE General Assembly. So it's also about engaging at it can be regional level. And now think about if you at regional level get a really good debate and a good idea, then you make a citizen initiative or petition. Mm-hmm. Then you raise a topic. And you already have, the good ideas. You just have to perhaps put it down at a one-pager. Then you have the ideas. So you can progress from whatever level. And of course, knowing people at one-to-one level, officials, which, can raise momentum in the parliament or whatever, is also a very good idea, or where you get at some point, where it's just easier access. So these are all vets in this photo. And when I work on the shoulders of all the vets of Europe, coming from UK, Ireland, Germany, Finland, Belgium, all over Europe. So we work on top of each other. But I just want to emphasize that this is Nancy de Bruyn, Executive Director of FVE, and particularly Nancy is important for the veterinary voice because she has such a vast knowledge of people at the European level and in the veterinary profession of Europe and across. And she has, she's leading the office in Brussels where you have all the support in your back that you would like to have. And they are the persons working on all of us veterinarians across Europe to have shared position papers. So we're ready, when transport regulation is part of the debate in the European system, then we have a position paper. And these papers, they take a lot of time to develop because we have to put them in consultations and to ask all colleagues around. But this is also a level where we need your voice. It is when your national association, when FVE asks for comments for these papers, then we want your comment. And your comment will be heard and it will be part of the amendment of the paper. So at this level, just engaging with your national association and engaging with FVE via the national association is of immense importance to what we do within FVE. You can become part of working groups in FVE, where you can work into Europe as well. We have all of these potential great minds that we want to engage with at so many levels. And if we look at the European veterinary voice system, we have FVE on the top of the umbrella. Below we have UEVP, which is vet practitioners. We have UEVH, food safety, public health. We have EASVO, state vet officers, and we have EVERY, who is education, research, industry. And below each of these entities, now I've just added below UEVP, we have FICAMA, which is companion animals. We have FIVA, equine vets. We have EAZWV, which are the zoo vets. So you can just enter the most nerdy group, and then you can engage from there at whatever level you want. So if you look at it, this is a very busy slide, because here you can see all what FVE is engaged with veterinary organizations, with European institutions, with international organizations, and different NGOs. Usually I start by saying that as a board member, I want questions which I'm informed of beforehand, and that's only a joke because I want whatever question. But I just say that I'm not even capable of knowing all what's going on. And that's why we need such an efficient office in Brussels to take care of this, because this is a huge machine working on behalf of veterinarians. And I can only chip in with my knowledge and go to some of the meetings, so we share this among us. And the persons right now who share this is this board. We were re-elected in June, and we worked together for 2 years, and now we have 2 more years. And it's a real pleasure to work with these people. And we work with everyday problems occurring across the portfolio, from medicines to agricultural animals to flat-nosed dogs. But while doing this, we also have a strategy of how to develop the veterinary profession in other means, because our profession is based on people having a high degree of vocation. We want to do a lot with what we do, but we are not too good at taking care of ourselves. So we are working quite hard on that, becoming part of being a veterinarian, that we actually take care of ourselves and our employees and the world around us. Because if we want to do good for animals, we need to do good for ourselves before doing that. So that was my take on giving you a tour around Europe. And I
really appreciate
I made it clear that
it was so much more than I expected. I'm so grateful, because I've been interested in this, what you explained, for so long, and for some reason, I was unable to find the answers, or maybe I lacked the time to find the answers, and you coming in to this interview and explaining it so perfectly with your personal touch and your personal experiences, it means a lot for me personally. So I do appreciate your time, and I thank you so much, Mette. I do have a final question for you, and I would really love you to share one or maybe several of your personal wins regarding the FVE and being in the board.
Yeah, so what I am really happy with is that when I entered the board, that's actually 3.5 years ago now, because I entered midterm, because a board member had to leave the board, and then I was elected. I started talking about diversity and mental health. And when I entered the board, I was the only woman and the youngest person in the board, and a lovely board to go into, but not a board, focusing too much on DI and mental health. And we started what's called now the Vet Joy Project, which is talking about standing on the shoulders of a group of engaged veterinarians working on this VetJoy project. That's been a huge pleasure for me to work on that, and I really enjoy that it's a topic in the veterinary profession now. Then it's so I'm so much working on animal welfare, and it's just been a personal, already being on the journey with animal welfare, having the board responsibility for animal welfare it's a challenge, and it's hard work, but it's also just really fulfilling, because right now we're, for example, working on a paper on use of animals in entertainment, which has been close to my heart for a long time, to create an opinion, a position on what do veterinarians think about how animals are used for all sorts of purposes. There's a lot, but I'd say that's probably one of the two main things that just comes to me right now.
Thank you. And I do have to say kudos for VetJoy. I was a part of this working group for a really short time, for a year or so, and then due to my own personal mental health issues, I needed to quit. And I was so sad about that. But the people who are doing the work in there, they're an amazing group of people. And I'm so happy that the VetJoy has been so popular. And I do hope that it will be even more popular, so that every veterinarian, in no matter what field, knows what it is and goes and checks it out and sees the research and resources that are on that homepage. And regarding animal welfare, it's a polarizing topic among many people, and I'm just happy that, again, a person like you is in this field and actively taking part in changing the perception and how the EU legislation is done for the animals. And again, I just love the quote you said, like, FVE is all of us, and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mette, for your time.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you liked this interview and got a lot of useful information. Please do check out the homepage of FVE, fve.org, also VetJoy and EFSA, and everyone mentioned in the podcast. If you feel so, please do share your ideas and comments down below. Also, if you find this useful for any of your friends, please do share. Also, you're always welcome to listen to my personal podcast, 100 Estonian Vets, which is available on YouTube and Spotify with Estonian name, Eesti 100 Loomaarsti. There are also some of the interviews in English as well. Thank you for watching.